tonight, I'm going to just give you a brief welcome. I will be talking at you guys for a little bit, but we do want to give you a chance to get to know your neighbors. So we'll have a small breakout session where you can get to know some of the folks that are in the room tonight. We are going to do a semi deep dive of the Farm Bill. We can't cover everything. It would take a very long time to cover all the aspects, the ins and outs of the Farm Bill, but we're just going to give you a top level overview of what that is and what's coming. Get to know our new Congress. We have a lot of new faces. We want to share some of the marker bills that are on our radar. I want to give a big shout out to the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. They are the boots on the ground in Washington, D.C., and that's how we get a lot of information to share with you since we don't have a dedicated federal staffer. So a lot of this is thanks to them, but we're going to share what's on not only their Farm Bill agenda, which is becoming our Farm Bill agenda, but also a couple other bills that are coming out of Illinois that we're excited about. Well, then, so this is the fun part. You get to decide soon if you'll stay or you'll go. We'll have some closing remarks, and that should happen at about 7:30, but we're going to give you the option to hang out with us for a little while longer to talk organizing. You know, it's the middle of February, Farm Bill expires in September. Let's chat together about some of those key target districts, who's in them, who maybe wants to take some more action with us. This doesn't mean that if you're not in a target district, you can't hang out. We'll welcome everybody to this, but we'll give you that option that if you did want to end your night a little early, you are free to do so.
I don't know what, but I usually have my pizza that makes it taste like really.
Let me find this person really quick. Or Nathan, you got him? Okay, cool. All right, so just a little bit about the Alliance. I know we do have some familiar faces, but for those who don't know us, we are a farmer-led and eater-powered alliance of folks who use our voices and our choices to shape a just and regenerative food system. So that means as much as we can, whenever we can, we're using our choices to support local and sustainable food. But when we can't buy our way out of the food system, we also need to use, but because we can't buy our way out of the food system, we're going to use our voices to make change at the root and with the policy that protects and maintains the status quo. So that's a really great lead into why we're here tonight talking about the Farm Bill. We also have some staff in the room. I think we have Kathleen Mueller, my fellow organizer on the team. I don't know if you can see her wave her hand or if she wants to wave her hand. We have our executive director, Liz Moran-Stelk, our communications coordinator, Nathan Ryder, and Melissa Frew. She is our development director. So everyone's going to be here helping to monitor the chat and just keep everything rolling tonight. But I just wanted to give a shout out to staff, and again, thanks everybody for joining us for a 6 o'clock call. It's cold outside, so I hope the cold is going to keep us inside and on the Zoom. So here's that fun part I was telling you about. We are going to break everybody up into groups of 5, and we're going to have about 10 minutes to do some icebreakers. What we are hoping, that you all talk about is, of course, introducing yourselves and sharing what your role is in the food and farm system. Like if you own a farm, what's your farm name, where you're coming from? And then a fun question is, what are the seeds that you've started? And this isn't necessarily your summer vegetables, but what are the seeds that you're planning to or are maybe you've already planted in your life that you want to share with the group? Maybe it's a project that you're working on or just something that is coming up for you that you would like to share with your group. And I know we came at that fast, and Nathan's been monitoring a lot of things. So Nathan, do you need another second to make breakout groups?
Let's see, how many people do we have total right now? I think we're going to go with, let's see, there we go, 9 breakout rooms all together. So I put the prompt in the chat there, name, where you're from, what you do, and your role in the food system. And then what are the seeds have you started? So if we're all ready, we'll go to those breakout rooms now and get to know our neighbors.
Cool. If
All
anybody
right.
has any questions, shout it out, but we'll see you in about 10 minutes. So next up is just another quick, since you only got to meet like 5 or 6 people, what I'm going to do is launch a poll, and the poll is going to ask you which best describes your role in the food system. So are you an eater, farmer? This is kind of what you maybe answered in your breakout group, but it's just going to let us know who is in this space with us. So I'm going to launch the poll. Oh, Nathan, you might have the poll access now. You are the poll master.
I am the poll master. Okay, here we go. Your role in the food system. I'm going to launch it now.
Cool.
Well, right. One thing.
Okay. So we'll give everybody another couple seconds to answer that.
We're almost all the way there.
Cool.
51 of 55 have answered. 52.
I know some folks are just listening in, so they may not see it. So
That's right. Okay, I think that's everybody. So we will end the poll. It looks like 55% are eaters and 37% are farmers, 2% are chefs.
Very cool. Awesome. Yay. So that is, it's really just helpful to us to see who's with us. And then another step to get to know, if you if you feel like typing and want to share just your name, where you're from, farm name, or what you do, kind of the same thing, just in the chat, and we can see who all is here also. Just another way to do some introductions. And we really appreciate you for going through this 3-step process, but it's the way we got to do it over Zoom, and we're grateful for your time to do it. All right, so we came here to talk about the Farm Bill, so that is what we are about to do. Nathan, we're still recording, right? Okay, cool. So the Farm Bill, it is, it used to be, well, it's still called the Agriculture Adjustment Act, and it was passed as part of the New Deal. So we're thinking, you know, back in the 1930s, and it came about as a means to address 2 concurrent problems: rock bottom prices for farmers due to overproduction and extensive hunger, poverty both on and off farms. And during World War I, there was a collective calling, or really a patriotic duty, to support feeding the world. And during this time, farmers, they dug up all of those native prairie grasses and they planted annual wheat crops. Soon after the war ended, the need for that global wheat supply collapsed. So farmers were left in this cycle of overproduction. And even though the need of wheat for wheat dropped, farmers had loans on the line, and that resulted in continued planting, so they didn't fault on their loans. So that overproduction led to wheat prices collapsing in 1918. Farmers were in desperate need of support, and even though the government led this charge and claimed that it was farmers' patriotic duty, there was not enough assistance there in their time of need. So this farm crisis ultimately became the Great Depression, and was also the foundation of the Dust Bowl, hence the pixelated picture up here for you guys. So all of those native prairie grasses that were holding the soil in place were replaced by a monocropping system, really poor agriculture practices, and that mixed with drought and high temperatures resulted in the Dust Bowl. So FDR took action once one speck of dust settled on his desk. That's a rumor, I'm just kidding, but he truly did see the need for the government to step in and offer help that farmers were so desperately asking for. So this Agriculture Adjustment Act sought to raise and stabilize those commodity prices by reducing the production, basically just raise the price of farm products by paying farmers to produce less. And the federal government incentivized farmers to produce less by providing rental and other benefit payments to those who withdrew acreage from cultivation. It was, you know, great for farmers that own their land, but for those who lived and worked on land owned by others, particularly Black sharecroppers in the South, the results were very disastrous, as landowners simply informed them that their labor was no longer necessary, and many were evicted from the land. So it's important to name this history. That first Farm Bill and Farm Bill since also, in many cases, explicitly excluded farmers of color and communities of color and how their programs were set up and delivered, and directly contributed to generations of land loss. For example, refusing to give loans or denying them program payments, which drove land loss for Black and Indigenous farmers, or immigrant policies that exploited the labor of people of color while excluding them from accessing the land and capital to farm. It's important also to note that historical context, because we're still navigating that today. You don't really need to look super hard before you see many places where racism is built into the structures of our current food and farm policy. And there are opportunities for us as advocates to shift those policies to be more equitable, some of which we'll talk about today. Advocates and farmers, they have been working for policy changes to address the structural inequity baked into
Liz,
I was muted. I don't know for how long. How much did we miss?
it was just 1 minute, like very
Okay.
fast. You're fine.
Okay. So we're just noting that historical context, and we want to dedicate more funding to groups, including farmers of color, who have faced significant discrimination at the hands of USDA to address the ongoing harm. We would love to redesign programs and policies to work more equitably so benefits don't disproportionately benefit larger farmers at the expense of smaller, diversified, sustainable operations. So working on the Farm Bill together is just one way that we can work to address the inequity and advance more equitable policies for everyone. That's a really big mission of the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. And like I said earlier, that trickles down to the work that we're doing and what we're focusing on. Okay, and I see a lot of things in the chat, but I think they're just introductions. But again, feel free, if there's questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will take some time for questions in just a little bit. So what else is the Farm Bill? That was basically the history of it, but really food brings us together. This Farm Bill is omnibus. It's a multi-year federal law that governs an array of agriculture and food programs, from programs, food programs for farmers that farmers rely on, to programs that families rely on for nutritious food. It provides an opportunity for policymakers to comprehensively and periodically, every 5 years, address ag and food issues. And every 5 years, the Farm Bill expires and then it's updated. It goes, but it's not that easy. It really goes through this extensive process where it's proposed, debated, and passed by Congress and signed by the president. So that's what's happening right now. We're going to get into more of the nitty-gritty of what that means. Every Farm Bill is probably going to have a unique name, just to give you a heads up. The current Farm Bill, passed in 2018, was called the Agriculture Improvement Act. Was enacted into law in December 2018, and it expires this September. So you may be wondering, you know, we just want this to be very clear that even though you aren't a farmer, this is called the Farm Bill, you are still a part of this network because we all eat. You don't have to be a farmer for the Farm Bill to affect your life. It's affecting everything from the food that's on our plate to the people that grow the food that goes on our plate, to all the intricacies in between. All right, so I believe many of you had, there should have been access to a packet, and we can make sure to put the link in the chat for that packet. Not that you had to read that before this meeting, not that you have to read it right now, but it is going to be a lot more in depth than all the things that we can cover today in the time that we have. So if you did want to reference that packet at any time, feel free to do so. Right now, we're just going to look at what is in the Farm Bill. There are these things called titles, and each title addresses a specific aspect of food, farm, or rural policy. The number sometimes varies, but right now the current Farm Bill contains 12 titles. I think that's on page 8 of your packet, if you did want to read more about them. So there are a number of these, ranging from, as you can see, commodity programs, conservation, credit, rural development, down to horticulture, this really small miscellaneous section. Some of what we really focus on at the Alliance is the conservation title. So that's like your environmental quality incentives program, conservation stewardship program, some of those conservation programs or climate smart programs that farmers are using. There is a big package of nutrition. That's something else that we focus on. We are dabbling with the credit, and we're learning more about that and crop insurance right now. But I would say that conservation and nutrition are two of the biggest titles that our group will focus on. And again, your packet has more about what each of these are, if you did want to reference that. So as far as the cost of the Farm Bill, it's a pretty expensive bill. This is, I would say, tack on at least 75 million to this. It's about, a little over a $400 billion package. There are 4 policy areas that dominate the spending. That's nutrition, as you can see, that with more than 75% this year, they are projecting that title might make up 84% of the total spending. And that's to keep some levels of spending, some funding levels level from like the COVID pandemic assistance and growth and participation. The crop insurance package and conservation and commodity programs are 3 of the others that are that dominate the spending here. So it's important to keep nutrition and Farm Bill together. Much about a Farm Bill comes down to politics between federal payments to farmers and federal payments to low-income families to purchase food through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or otherwise known as SNAP. Every Farm Bill cycle, folks might ask, is this a Farm Bill or is this a food bill, or is it both? And it is both, and here's why. As you saw from the cost breakdown just a second ago, the nutrition title is the most expensive title in the Farm Bill. And this has led to contentious debates for decades. But the nutrition title is incredibly important to build bipartisan support. The next 4 graphs, you'll see 2 here, they're going to help explain this. So the first couple graphs here represent members on the House Agriculture Committee and compares total farms in their district, in the Republican and Democratic districts, to households receiving SNAP in those same districts. And then we're going to switch over to the next slide, which shows the same, but on the Senate Agriculture Committee. And with there being significantly less farms in the blue districts, as you can see here on the top graph, and here on the top graph, significantly less farms in blue versus red. This is a clear reason why the Farm Bill must represent food and farms. The Republican members would not be able to get the votes that they need to pass the bill without nutrition being in the game. If we combine nutrition and farm policy, there are more people from both sides of the aisle with skin in the game. Okay, just check in the chat to make sure there's nothing. Okay. All right, so we have a new Congress, which some of you may have seen. There's new party leadership for both the House Republicans and Democrats. There's a lot of fresh faces. This is I don't know, it's astounding to me, but 85 new members of Congress, 75 of those are in the House and 7 in the Senate. There are some new faces on the House Agriculture Committee. And the Senate Agriculture Committee. We'll share more about that in just a second, actually, like right now. So this is kind of getting into those fresh faces, but also who writes the Farm Bill, just to point out how important Illinois is. So here is our Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. They're one of the 2 groups that writes the Farm Bill. We have a majority Democratic-led committee here, and familiar face, Senator Dick Durbin is on that committee. Pulled him out of there, so good to know he is still on the committee. We were hoping so. He's been a great representative for conservation and agriculture, and glad that he is staying put. And the next group that also writes the Farm Bill is the House Agriculture Committee. So there is a majority in it's Republican led with 28 members. 24 members are in on the Democratic side, and pulling out a few new faces. One familiar face, Mary Miller, who is in the 15th district. She was on the committee last year. Last year was her freshman year, I believe. And now we have 3 new freshmen, Nikki Budzinski in the 13th, Jonathan Jackson in the 1st, and Eric Sorensen in the 17th. So this is really clear that we have a lot of power here in Illinois. And that is why I'm really excited that there's so many of you here tonight to talk about how we use that, and we share our stories, and we advocate for issues that are important. So this next slide, this is, just to show you how crazy these congressional maps are. These are redrawn. So it's kind of to give you a visual on where you might be on the map if you're in one of these target districts, which is the 1st, 13th, 15th, and 17th. But I also threw in the 14th with Representative Lauren Underwood, and here is why. Because Representative Lauren Underwood is actually on the House Agriculture Appropriations Committee. So this is, I think, her 2nd run with that. Very exciting, very important. She's kind of just that next step of importance. So first, those 2 agriculture committees are going to debate the bill back and forth, and then Lauren Underwood and others are going to help decide how the funding gets distributed. So she is just as important, also in a key district. And this is just to give you a visual. This is off Google. I can share this link in just a second on where to find these maps. It's really handy. You can just click the one that you're on and it can highlight it for you. So moving on. So this is, just a timeline of how things work. Once the committees have finished their hearings, farm tours, listening sessions, they begin this drafting process of the Farm Bill. They're doing it independently in each of their chambers. Then things just naturally move along. It's really easy, and poof, the bill ends up on the president's desk, and he's going to sign it. It's all going to be great. Flowers, peace signs, lovely, wonderful. But I'm kidding. So that was an accurate representation of what it kind of looks like. But then when you read between the lines, it's not as easy. Right now in the timeline, we just recently confirmed the committee assignments, which you just saw. There are marker bills flying out left and right, which we'll get to soon. So those are being introduced now through April and May. The hearings have actually already begun and will continue through March and April. And that's where constituents, farmers, stakeholders get to go and testify. So you can, I'm just going to share a link in the chat. If you wanted to check out what committees have already been had, they just had one on nutrition. If you follow that link, you can watch all those recordings. If you're very curious, we can try to send those out a little more regularly if that's what this group would like, just so you can be aware of what's being talked about. So after this happens, there's some markups. So that's when everybody gets the bill and does a lot of redlining and says what they like, what they don't like. And then we start to get to that finalization point. There are projections from NSAC that the Farm Bill may end up on the floor in June or July. The reauthorization process, it seems a little murky if it will be passed on time. There's going to be some obstacles. As you saw, the Farm Bill contains some significant amounts of mandatory nutrition funding. So that has historically, as I said, been a real big sticking point between each side. And in this divided Congress, that's going to continue and maybe complicate some negotiations. And on top of that, lawmakers are also going to face a unique challenge formulating title funding due to the billions of Farm Bill programs, billions for Farm Bill programs included in the Inflation Reduction Act. So that was passed in August of 22. And basically it was a historic funding amount. And a lot of it is going to investing, at least $20 billion is going to investing in climate smart agriculture and conservation technical assistance. So the goal is to make sure that this funding stays in climate smart agriculture and Farm Bill conservation programs, because it's the largest investment into agriculture conservation and rural communities in decades. And farmers are really depending on these resources. So in the House Ag Committee, as you saw, the Republicans have the majority. So we've heard from NSAC that they might try to cut some things that I just said. So we're just going to keep our eye on it and make sure that we are working with you all to keep this in the back of our minds and the front of our minds, so we can craft some stories on why protecting funding and passing these marker bills are really important. Speaking of marker bills, but I'll pause if there's any questions. I know the team is furiously in the chat, so I just want to make sure, but I think we're good. So a marker bill, in order to dive into that, let's explain it. So this is a piece of legislation introduced in Congress that's not actually intended to pass as a standalone bill, but rather it's intended for inclusion into a larger bill. So for us, the Farm Bill. I like to think of a really cheesy reference, but if anyone has seen The Blob, whether it's the 50s version or maybe the 70s version, it's this alien that comes down, and it's gruesome, but I'm just going to think of it as this friendly blob that is picking up marker bills as it goes through the Senate and the House of Representatives, and envelops all of these into the Farm Bill. So hopefully all the marker bills get picked up by the blob, and they end, and our asks end up into the Farm Bill. So there's smaller bills that help communicate important ideas or reforms that will ultimately be included in the Farm Bill. They're really important in this process. They will help lawmakers and grassroots advocates like us build support for farm policies. And the Farm Bill, as you can tell, it can be really overwhelming. So it helps to have these smaller packages that can bring some attention to new ideas. So the more support that a marker bill gets, the more likely it's included to be swept up by the blob in the final bill and become law. So we're still in this bill introduction phase. As you heard from the previous slide, we're going to be here until about April. And we are still pushing for some new bills to be introduced. Once those bills are introduced, the ag committees will discuss what's on the table and what to include in the package. And I bet you're all wondering what we have as far as marker bills go. Get ready, because there's 10 on the list. I'm not going to go a full detail for you. That's what your packets are for. They have a bunch of information. You'll see I pulled some stuff from like NSAC's one-pagers too. I have to give them shout out after shout out, because a lot of this information is thanks to them. But we're going to do just some high-level overviews so we don't spend too much time here. But again, linking to the packet. I hope everybody was able to get into that PDF. If not, we can find a different way to send it to you. But first up, we have our Agriculture Resilience Act, and we call this the ARA for short. What we found is at NSAC, they love acronyms. They have like 8 pages front and back of acronyms. So we're going to call this the ARA. So this recognizes that healthy soil can capture carbon that's causing climate change, but farmers need support to make transitions into those practices. The ARA is farmer-driven, science-based. It's a roadmap for reaching zero greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture and supporting farmers and ranchers to adapt to those impacts of change that we've seen here in Illinois, like flooding, for a big example. The provisions in the ARA include some voluntary and incentive-driven measures to allow farmers to meet those goals and improve our food system by directly engaging them to make critical changes necessary for our future. I love this bill because it is almost a complete package of goodies. This not only is it climate, not only is it supporting really important conservation programs like the Conservation Stewardship Program and Environmental Quality Incentive Program, but it's also supporting local food. One of the big provisions is to expand pasture-raised livestock. So there is some grant funding for processing. So this is a good bill, and we actually have a way to take action. I think the team has the link, that's what it's called. So this is for farmers. We're going to have, once we have a bill number for this, there'll be another chance to take action to make sure your representatives know that you want to support this. But if you're a farmer, we would love to have you sign this petition so we can send it off to NSAC. They're going to get this whole giant list together. This is being shared all over the country. And on March 8th, there is a climate rally that's happening in Washington, D.C., and they're going to deliver this letter to Congress. So it's really important that if you're a farmer, that you sign this. We'll make sure that this gets shared afterwards too, if you aren't able to click that link. Next up, along with processing, is the Strengthening Local Processing Act. So the pandemic exacerbated the issues of local processors and small and medium-sized livestock producers. Processors were overwhelmed, they were understaffed, and in lack of support while farmers are like waiting for months to get processing dates. The Strengthening Local Processing Act is bipartisan. It's going to increase the capacity of small and very small meat processing plants to better serve local livestock and poultry producers and the communities that they serve. So the more we support these processors, the more you and I can have access to really good local meat. That excites me. You may not be a meat eater, but this is still important for just the economic vitality of your small town and for the economic vitality of the farmer. This is bipartisan, and it lays out a national strategy for sustained investment in our small and very small meat processing plants. So like I mentioned before, corporate control, this is putting more power back into the hand of the smaller processors. It's going to ensure that the 2023 Farm Bill continues the historic pandemic response investments in small meat processing plants. That was really critical in the last couple of years. So this wants to maintain some of that funding, which is very important. And it's going to help create more resilient and diversified food processing systems and reduce some logistical complexity for farmers, which potentially a farmer won't have to drive 5 hours to a processor. They could potentially have access to a processor closer by. So this was just reintroduced, and we have an action alert ready. So I think Liz is going to throw another link in the chat. This is for everybody, and it's just it's going to take you to one of our every action pages. You'll fill out your information. It's going to load up your legislators, and there is a sample blurb that can be sent. If you did want to personalize it a little bit, if you're a farmer and you want to put your story in there, great. Or if you just want to send what's there, that's awesome too. But it was just reintroduced a few days ago, very recently. So we will keep these action alerts coming. So next up is the Justice for Black Farmers Act. And this is going to enact policies to end discrimination within the USDA, protecting remaining Black farmers from losing their land, providing land grants to create new generation of Black farmers and restore the land base that has been lost, and implement some systemic reforms to help family farmers across the United States. We don't have an action alert just yet for this. This was recently reintroduced in January, but we're definitely going to work on pumping these out. So don't worry, you will not be in short of supply of actions to take. But this we've seen at the state level too, with Representative Sonia Harper working on introducing something similar last year. We're still working with the team on what's going to happen with that this year. But this is a really exciting one. We hope to see some progress here. So the next is a local food marker bill. It's still nameless. If you were at one of the dishing events with us this summer, didn't have a name then, it doesn't have a name now. They're working on that. As we know, Local food infrastructure has been hollowed out, and communities in Illinois really need to rebuild our local and regional processing, aggregation, and distribution. This bill is all about supporting the infrastructure of local and regional food systems. And with the call to action here, we want to make sure that investments in local and regional food systems and supply chains provide significant return when so again, kind of similar to the Strengthening Local Processing Act, the funding aspect of this is when the pandemic upended our food system. We want to make sure that the funding that was allocated towards supporting local food systems and keeping things afloat, keeping farmers funded, keeping farmers markets up and running, we want to make sure that stays maintained and we don't lose those historic investments. And yeah, I think that's all that I wanted to say on that one. We just don't want to go backwards. We're making some real progress here for local food and local food infrastructure. Let's not retract. Let's keep going forward. All right. Next, sorry, I feel like I just like, and next, the Farm to School Act. So I don't have a lot of updates here. I know I don't want to shout out my colleague Kathleen, but if I get anything wrong here, Kathleen, because I know you just met with the person in charge of this bill, I'm just going to share what we had on the docket before. And I know that this reintroduction is coming, but the whole emphasis behind this is it's common sense. It's going to benefit children and families while providing some economic opportunities to farmers. Across the country and in Illinois, we saw that there is a big increase in demand for farm to school programming, which tells us that more people are beginning to understand the connection between local food and healthy young minds. So this is seeking to expand funding for programmatic scope of the highly successful USDA Farm to School grant program. It's also going to ensure that more communities, specifically those serving racially diverse and high needs student populations, as well as engaging with beginning, veteran, and socially disadvantaged farmers, have a competitive opportunity to benefit for this valuable program. Just to highlight another state aspect of this too, here at the Alliance, we're actually working on funding a farm to school coordinator position. So that's something you're going to see on our state agenda. So not only is there a lot of buzz at the federal level, at the state level, we're trying to do some good work too. All right, we're getting there, folks. So the next one is the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. This is called SARE for short. This has been supporting sustainable agriculture research for over 30 years. We have several farmers who have benefited from this program. It is really the only regionally based, farmer-driven, and outcome-oriented competitive research program that involves farmers directly as the primary investigators or cooperatives in research and education projects. The appropriations aspect of this bill is that SARE should be reauthorized with mandatory funding of at least $60 million a year, or at least 60 million. It's never really met that funding level before. So they are hoping to raise that to 100 million. And despite its long record of helping farmers develop and adopt those innovative practices and systems, like I said, it's yet to reach those funding levels. So we're really hoping to see an increase, and that's where Lauren Underwood could potentially come in handy and help us with those appropriations. So that is SARE. We just have a few left. Next up is crop insurance. The main, and like I said before, this is something we're dabbling with a little bit. This is a really big concern of our farmer caucuses, and we've been talking a little bit about crop insurance before, but with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition's marker bill here, the main emphasis is asking that the Farm Bill must improve crop insurance to serve the diversity of American agriculture, promote natural resource stewardship, and level the playing field for family farmers through efficient use of public funds. So by improving access to the safety net, small, mid-sized, beginning, organic, and specialty crop growers could benefit. Currently, they are facing numerous obstacles to applying for crop insurance, and this bill seeks to break down that barrier. along with leveling the playing field for family farms by ensuring the efficient use of public funds. This is actually a fact that really stuck out to me. I know Kathleen too. We were just in DC and we use this line a lot, but by establishing an annual per farm cap on crop insurance subsidies that would impact just, if you put this cap on, it's only going to impact 3% of the largest farms and save about $16 billion over the next 10 years. That's insane. Those are public funds, like your taxpayer dollars are going to fund crop insurance, and you should have more say in how those funds are being used. So this is an interesting one to take a look at, read a little bit more about in the fact sheet. We're going to keep paying attention to this too. And next we have access to agriculture credit. For many farmers and ranchers interested in acquiring land, purchasing major equipment, or even establishing conservation practices, access to credit is a must. And many producers and aspiring producers of color, as well as female producers, have reported facing discrimination when attempting to obtain agricultural loans from private lenders, as well as from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So among a few other things, this bill is really seeking to alleviate those barriers. And more details on this can be found in your fact sheet too. All right, now we have some ones kind of coming out from Illinois. So this one's kind of Illinois and Iowa. This is the Cover Act, and it creates the Good Steward Cover Crop Program to provide producers a $5 per acre premium subsidy when they enroll in a covered insurance program and plant cover crops for conservation purposes. So this reserves $5 million for some technical assistance, outreach, and program support to help producers access the program. It's really neat. I think I saw Dylan Cook on the Zoom here. He's from American Farmland Trust, and that team was really integral to not only working with Senator Casson, but before this bill was even a thought in anyone's mind, American Farmland Trust was one of the many organizations really leading the charge in a very similar program happening here in Illinois. You may have heard us bug you about it a lot, but it's called the Fall Covers for Spring Savings Program, and it's giving farmers a $5 reward on their crop insurance premium for planting cover crops. So this was modeled after an Iowa program. Those two states collaborated and worked with Senator Caston to introduce this at the congressional level. It's really exciting because these two states have clear evidence on showing that this is working, and it shows that our state program is beneficial. So the fact that that was escalated into a congressional bill is just really exciting and something we definitely want to keep our eye on and highlight and have you support if you're interested when we have some more action alerts for it. And the last one, so we're keeping our eye on the Soil Health Day resolution. This one is another neat one, another one to highlight coming from Illinois. It was, so Representative Raja Krishnamurthy in the 8th district reached out to our office actually to use the language that our Soil Health Farmer Caucus passed in a resolution last year, which here in our state, it declared a Soil Health Day and a Soil Health Week. They used that language to then introduce a resolution at the congressional level last year. A little bit different. It seeks to designate December 5th as Soil Health Day to mirror the National Soil Health Day. And so I spoke with their office. They want to reintroduce this resolution this year. So be on the lookout for that, some more action alerts. And if you want to celebrate with us here in Illinois, we have a full week of activities coming up. We had people submit their own event proposals, and there's ways for you to sign up for those events to attend. There's some Zooms, there's some field days, there's some grazing tours. There's a lot happening, but we are very excited. You can join us here in Springfield because on March 8th, we are going to be doing a soil health rally. We're going to go to the Capitol together to educate legislators, and we're going to have a rally in the Rotunda. the really big, beautiful center of the Capitol and hear from a lot of our dignitaries, potentially the Lieutenant Governor. Very excited. It's just, we're going to celebrate soil health together, and you are invited to join us. I think our team put in a couple links, so very excited to do that. Okay.
Liz, we do have a couple questions that popped up at the end there on all
Yay.
our marker bills.
Okay.
Ed was wondering if there's any discussion on the continuation of the TOGA program, Transitional and Organic Grower Assistance.
I would have to get back to you on that, Ed. I think that was a provision, and I might stop my share really quick so I can just hang out with you guys on screen. I might have to look back into this here, but I think I remember reading about that program. But Ed, I will get back to you. I'll mark that down.
Awesome. And Natasha is wondering if there's any marker bills regarding changes for industrial hemp.
I haven't heard of much, and that's not to say that they're not out there, Tasha, because with the National Sustainable Agriculture kind of being the boots on the ground for us, they aren't exactly focusing on hemp. That's not that we don't want to focus on that, but that's just not the information that we've been getting. But I could check in with some of our folks here, maybe Rachel Berry from the Illinois Hemp Growers Association might know more. I'm not sure if she's with us tonight, but we can try to get you some answers there. And Ed, now that I've had a chance to think about it, I do think that there will be a continuation of that program, but I am going to send you some more information on it. I know that was I just can't remember which marker bill that was in. I talked a lot, so I would love some more questions. I would love to hear other voices. And I appreciate everyone for staying on and hearing this full rundown. Thank you, Dylan.
Don't go just yet. You have more. If there
Right,
aren't
yeah,
any
you
questions.
can't go. So if there's no questions, then I'm going to jump back into it, and feel free to email, send more questions. We want to hear them. We want to hear from you. So don't leave yet. We are giving you the option here and something to think about. Should I stay or should I go? And if anyone wants to sing that little ditty, I'd love to hear it. But
should I stay or should I go now?
Thank you, Nathan.
Okay.
Is that the Clash? Awesome. So if you choose to stay, you are going to get to meet with folks from, what we're doing is trying to bring folks from those target districts that we talked about. And like I said earlier, if you are not in those target districts, please still stay. You can still be a part of this conversation. We're not, but what we're going to do is talk about organizing for the Farm Bill. So we're really curious if there's any volunteers that may want to get a little bit more involved this year. Potentially if you're a farmer and you want to have your congressperson out to your farm, maybe you want to work on joining a roundtable, hosting a roundtable, sharing your issues. So just someone we can count on to help share action alerts. Like I said, there's a lot more in the hopper, and it would be great to have some more support sharing those out to your networks. So this group is, just going to talk about those things together. And if you decide to go and you don't want to have that conversation, then if you would like to think about supporting our work and join our farmer-led, eater-powered community, we really encourage you to become a member of the Alliance. Our members are the backbone of our organization. They help us build collective power needed to tackle these really big food and farm issues. And all of these amazing farmers and eaters, they're bringing these issues to our attention. They're helping shape our food and farm policy agenda, and they're advocating for those issues during the legislative session. Like I just mentioned, we have a lobby day coming up. So if you want to be involved in some of that work, if you love the work that we're doing and you just, can't wait to be involved, we consider that you take the next step to become a member. I think we're going to drop in a little link here for you to read more about us and make that consideration. There's some monthly sustainers, or if you just want to make a one-time donation, that's awesome. We really appreciate it. Love to have you guys. And my last request, because I said that there was 2, is we have an evaluation. If you could, it's super quick. We just want to we want you to let us know how we did, and if there's anything we should follow up with you on. If you think of your question while you're filling that out, it's a great place to write it, and I'd be happy to try to get back to you with an answer. So just 2 requests. Maybe consider becoming a member if you aren't already one. Thank you to everybody that is, and then to fill out an evaluation. And if you want to be in that group that leaves, this is the time to do so. I really am grateful for your time tonight, for spending so much of it with us on a chilly Thursday night. But if you do want to be in that group that hangs out for a little while longer, we're going to get into the fun organizing part. Really, again, what we're looking at is who can we count on to take some action this year to support this just, regenerative, local food and the local farming and food, blah, blah, blah. I think I need to share my screen. That's what it is. I don't think you guys can see this, or can you? You can. Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So we're going to, again, focus on those key congressional districts, but you'll see that I added a couple. So 1, 13, 14, 15, 17. Those are all the folks that we just went over. Of course, Senator Durbin. So everybody's really important here because he covers the whole state. But we also added Representative Robin Kelly. Like I said, Kathleen and I were just in DC, and they're super interested in local food issues, farm to school stuff. So keeping them aware of what's going on is important. And then 6 is Caston and 8 is Krishnamurthy. So just added those because they do have some neat bills coming out of our state. But again, if you aren't in these congressional districts, that's okay. If you don't know if you're in any of these congressional districts, we are going to drop in the chat a Find Your Representatives tool. And if you are not able to click on that, I also can pull up a list and check on your district if you did need to ask to see if you're in one. But I think everybody wants to stay, but we would like to know, oh, another question came in. We would like to know who is in these target districts too. But we have a question. Yes, Bob, great question about, so Bob asked, can I speak to Republican Rep Miller's interest in local food as a way to diversify her family farm, and how her interest might drive cooperation with Illinois Dems for this bipartisan agenda? So again, highlighting a recent Washington trip, Kathleen and I did meet with their staffer, and we were, the conversation actually went really well. The representative is her and her husband farm, and he is part of the General Assembly here in Illinois. They raise cattle, they're using cover crops. So they are supportive of the local processing, they're supportive of conservation programs. During our conversation specifically, we did highlight the local food bill and a lot of the working lands asks. We made a direct connection to our state's nutrient loss reduction strategy, the farm runoff that's happening, and that, you know, if we want to make sure that we're keeping these programs funded to ensure that we're reaching those goals. That seemed to resonate really well with them. And the local food topics also seem to resonate really well because they produce local food. So they didn't actually have an ag staffer at that time. We were just talking with someone who covers everything. So we hope to keep back in touch, stay in touch with them on these issues. But I think I could see their office being really supportive, you know, but a meeting doesn't translate to negotiations happening later. So, you know, we just hope to keep in their ear. And there are a lot of our members from her district. So as long as we're keeping these issues fresh in her mind through action alerts and potentially meetings, I think we can attempt to accomplish some of those goals. I hope that was an okay answer, Bob. Kimberly says, I live down the road from Mary Miller, friends with her kids, happy to help. Awesome, Kimberly. Yes, that's great. So that is a really good introduction into this organizing part. So does anyone need help finding their district, or is everybody pretty clear? And I love that Morgan and Josh put their district number in there. If you are curious and want to share your district, I think that's great. And we can plop some numbers into the chat.
Hey, Liz.
And yeah.
Kevin was asking about state rep coffee.
I don't know, Kevin. Rep coffee. And that was referring to.
Well, just contacting our state rep, as well as, our, federal, I was just wondering if that's a good idea, because he's a local restaurant owner.
Yeah, Kevin, since we also have a really great state agenda too that we're going to start. So you're going to be getting state alerts and federal alerts from us. So don't worry, the state actions that can go directly to Rep Coffee are going to be coming. Kathleen and I are working on getting some action alerts out so you can let him know what's important. But yeah, I would say once that comes, to start notifying Rep Coffee of what's on the agenda and what's important to you. I think that was the last question. Okay. And is that Veronica Reuter that asked what district? I think. Okay. I have it here. One sec. So Liz, do you think we should break this up at all, or should we just stay in this group? Sorry, what?
I think there might be value in breaking it up into at least two, Liz.
Yeah, okay. And I think that was the only person that maybe, I'll get to the chat and answer some questions here soon, but I think that, and Dr. Danielle, we need to find out what district you're into. So
Also
Nathan,
Veronica.
if you could, I got Veronica.
Okay.
And then Danielle, is that Mortel? Is that the last name? Oop.
Danielle's DeWall.
Okay. Nathan, if you don't mind working on separating, and then I think we have a Jamboard potentially that we're going to use. Kathleen?
Yeah, I can drop that in the chat right
Sweet.
now.
Awesome. Okay. And if folks don't mind trying the Find Your Rep app or the link, that'd be great. And then if you want to private message one of our team members your address, we can find that a little easier. I'm not sure if I may just not be spelling something correctly, but I can't find a couple of these. Okay, so we have a Jamboard, and soon we're going to separate into a couple groups, but we're basically going to be answering these questions together on who can we count on to take action, and some of those are going to revolve around some farm tourism. So any farmers in the room that may be interested in this farm tour idea, the virtual roundtable, text banking, which is a fun one. So the Stewardship Alliance just got some access to, and some of you may have seen that on your sign up form where you opted in to let us text you. We haven't really used that yet, but we're just trying to bulk this up. So if you wanted to potentially volunteer to be someone we can count on to text your buddies some action alerts, this is just something that we can give you the tool to do that and to help just get more information out there. We also kind of similarly would love to know who may be wanting to do some social sharing, so we can have a group to say, hey, we have this action alert, can you put it on social media, or can you share this to your networks if you maybe have an email network that you operate. And we can also just check in if we're missing anything, any other ideas from the group. And then we have some research needs. We'd love to get the scoop on if you know anything that's happening in your district as far as like open houses or town halls that you might be going to, what might be coming up that could be a chance for you to meet with your member of Congress. And are there any other groups that we're missing that maybe didn't attend that are important to reach out to? And then finally, stories are really important. Who might be interested in like writing some letters to the editor about some of these issues and getting those into some local papers, which we can help you with. Okay. So I think I'm just going to reshare this in the chat. I think everybody is kind of aware. We can help you in the chat, in the breakout groups, find your district if you need to. We're going to follow along on this Jamboard, and we're kind of all going to be working on, you can work on it too with us, or if you just want to shout out verbally what you want us to write on a sticky note, that is just fine. But we're just going to walk through those same questions and write some notes on stickies. And I think I'm done talking, and Nathan probably has some stuff ready for us. 20 minutes went by really fast. Really appreciate these folks for staying on and walking through the Jamboard a little more. I see it is getting plump, and I appreciate the volunteers. I think we're gonna give you 11 minutes back of your night. And this, I've said it before, but this is the N Alliance first. 11 minutes early is wild for ending a meeting. Usually it's 11 minutes late. So we have an evaluation in the chat. Tell us what you think, please. And Kathleen and I and Liz, we're all gonna work together on getting all of this information out to you. Get ready for a bunch of alerts, ways to take action, especially on state stuff too. It's both. So yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. I hope you have a great night and a wonderful weekend, potentially a long weekend for some of you. So get some rest, and we'll see you again soon. We have the Equity Learning Circles coming up for members at the end of the month, if that's something you signed up for, or a campaign team. So we'll see some of your faces in some of those meetings. So yay.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much, Alana. So good to see you.
You're welcome. You too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, friends.